You didn't say anything. You were hurt. You just couldn't explain why. And explaining it would have required admitting that you had expected something you never actually asked for. So you said you were fine. And you were mostly. And the evening continued and the conversation moved on, and the person across from you had no idea that something had shifted. But something had. You've been here before. The birthday that passed without the kind of acknowledgement you needed but never specified. The hard week where you wanted to be checked on and weren't, not because nobody cared, but because you never said. The conversation where you were waiting for someone to notice something you hadn't said out loud, and when they didn't, you told yourself it was fine and smiled and asked how their day was. The expectation was real. The communication wasn't. And in the gap between those two things, in that specific silence, something accumulated. Not resentment, exactly. Something quieter. The slow, barely visible feeling of not being seen by someone who was looking right at you. The expectation that never gets spoken isn't the one you decided to keep secret. It's the one that felt so obvious that saying it out loud seemed unnecessary. Like explaining that you'd like someone to notice when you're struggling. Like asking to be remembered on a day that matters. Like wanting the person who knows you best to sometimes check in without being prompted. The assumption underneath them is that love should come with a certain kind of attentiveness. That the people who care about you should be able to read the signals, the quietness, the slightly shorter answers, the way you said, "I'm fine," with just enough flatness that someone paying attention would notice. That caring means knowing. That knowing means seeing. That seeing means acting on what's seen without being asked. And that assumption, that seeing without being asked, it wasn't made up. It came from early experiences of being known, of someone noticing before you had to say, of love that felt like being seen accurately, without effort, without explanation. The problem isn't that you want to be seen. The problem is that you learn to treat being seen as proof of being loved, which means asking for it feels like it would cancel the proof. If you have to ask, does it still count? So why didn't you say anything? Not as an accusation, as a real question worth sitting with. Reasons that made complete sense given everything you'd learned about what happens when you make your needs visible. There was the fear of asking for too much, of being the person who needs things, who requires tending, who can't just be easy, who makes love feel like work. You'd seen what happened to women who asked for too much. Or thought you had. And the lesson landed before you were old enough to question whether it was true. There was the belief that if someone really loved you, they would know. That the asking itself was evidence of a gap, not in communication, but in the love. That if you had to explain what you needed, the giving of it wouldn't count the same way. It would be compliance, not care. The protection of the unspoken expectation. Because as long as you never said it out loud, it could never be definitively refused. The person could still come through. The hope stayed alive. And hope, even the kind you hadn't looked at closely, was easier to carry than knowing that you had asked, and it hadn't mattered. The silence wasn't passivity. It was the most careful thing you knew how to do with something you were afraid to lose. I read John Gottman once, a psychologist who spent decades studying what actually happens inside relationships, not what people say happens. And one idea stayed with me in a way I didn't expect. What I took from it was this: the gap between what we need and what we communicate isn't a failure of love. It's a failure of translation. Two people can be fully committed to each other and still be speaking entirely different emotional languages, one of them fluent in attentiveness and anticipation, the other not even knowing that was the language being spoken. I kept returning to that for weeks after I first read it, because if that's true, if the gap is a translation problem rather than a love problem, then the disappointment isn't evidence that the relationship is broken. It's evidence that something was never said in a language the other person could hear. The question stops being, why didn't they know? And becomes, what would it have taken to say it in a way that could actually land? The expectation was real. The need was real. But the person across from you was working with the information they had, and the information they had was incomplete. They were doing their best with what you gave them, which is a harder thing to sit with than being failed by someone who simply didn't care. The disappointment accumulates. It builds in layers. The small unmet expectation that you absorbed and moved on from. And the next one. And the one after that. Each one survivable. Together, over time, they create a kind of distance that neither person fully understands. You start to feel like you're not being chosen, not seen, not known in the way you need to be known. And the person beside you, who bought the flowers and remembered the restaurant, and thought that was the language, starts to feel like they're failing at something without knowing what it is or how to fix it. Two people in the same relationship, experiencing different versions of it. You carrying the accumulation of everything that went unsaid. Them, confused by a distance they can feel but can't locate. And the longer it goes on, the more the silence compounds, the harder it becomes to go back to the beginning. To say, this is what I needed. This is what I was waiting for. This is the thing I should have said 3 months ago but didn't. And then again last week. And again last night when you asked if I was okay, and I said yes. The silence has its own momentum. Not the general you. You. The specific person reading this who has someone in mind right now. Someone whose face arrived the moment this started. Someone you've been thinking about through all of it. What did you need from them that you never said? The real one. The one that lives underneath the explanation. The thing you actually wanted, in the exact way you wanted it, from that particular person. I'll guess, because I think I know. You wanted to be seen without having to perform being seeable. You wanted someone to notice the thing you were carrying without having to hand it to them first. You wanted to matter in a way that didn't require you to make your mattering legible, to translate it, justify it, make it easy to receive. You wanted to be known the way you know other people. The way you've spent years learning the preferences and sensitivities and quiet needs of everyone around you, and quietly wished someone was doing the same for you. Quietly, accurately, without having to ask. And you never said that, because saying it would have meant admitting how much you needed it, much felt like too much to need. The part of you that learned to want quietly, that decided somewhere along the way that needing things out loud was dangerous, that the safest version of love was the one you didn't have to ask for, that if you made your needs small enough, invisible enough, easy enough to miss, then the missing of them couldn't hurt as much. That part learned something true about survival. It just applied it to places where survival wasn't the point anymore. You are allowed to need things, specific things, things that require explanation and repetition and the willingness to say, this is what care looks like for me, and I need you to know it even if it feels like too much to say out loud. You are allowed to want to be known without performing the knowing. You are allowed to ask. Nobody told you that wanting out loud was permitted. That needing with precision is different from needing too much. That the people who love you cannot read what you haven't written, even when you've been leaving hints for years, even when it felt impossible that they could miss it. So I'm telling you now, the expectation was never the problem. The silence was. And the silence was always yours to break. This letter doesn't end with an instruction. You already know what it is. You've known for a while. The knowing isn't the hard part. The hard part is the moment before saying it. The breath before the sentence that starts with, I need, or I wanted, or when you didn't, I felt. That moment is very small and very large. Everything shifts there, in the decision to say the thing instead of absorbing it, to hand someone the language they've been missing, to trust that asking doesn't cancel the value of what's given. You've been quiet for long enough. From someone who recognizes the exhaustion of carrying what was never yours to carry alone. For anyone who found themselves thinking of someone specific while reading this is where they come from. This channel exists for the things that live in the gap between what we feel and what we say. For the expectations that never got spoken. For the silence that built up without anyone meaning it to. Subscribe so the next one arrives when it should.